going to run through 3 examples of graphing trig with transformations, just a couple of tidbits. One, I'm at war with my writing tablet as always. I don't know why I haven't got a new one. I really do need one. And 2, I have a bit of a cough, so if I cough, make sure you're 6 feet away from your speakers when I do so. Okay, so let's get going. And here's the problem with the writing tablet. Okay, so what we have here is y is equal to 1/2 sine of 2x, and 2x is in parentheses. So that means that this is going to impact my x, this is going to impact my y. So what we have here is we have the table that you may be familiar with from Algebra 2, where we have stretch and shrink on the horizontal. Well, we're just going to shrink, because remember, this is basically 1 over b if you want to think about it, by 1/2. So we're going to shrink by 1/2. And this is going to be very difficult to write with. And vertical, I'm also shrinking by 1/2. Reflections, I don't have any on the horizontal, but I do have it over the x-axis, over x on the y. And we don't have any translations right or left or up or down. So what we need to look at is some other properties here. Let's kind of predict what's going to happen here. We have a period. Now remember, period is 2 pi over b. All right. So when we put 2 pi over 2, our period is going to be 1 pi. Our phase shift is going to be straightforward. There's nothing there because I don't have anything adding or subtracting, so none. We don't have a vertical shift, okay? And our amplitude is 1/2, which is hiding, so our amp is equal to 1/2, okay? That means I'm going to be 1/2 distance above and 1/2 distance below my equilibrium. Parent function is sine, so sine of x. And what we're going to do is, straight off the unit circle, we start medium, so we're going to have 0. We go up, 1, 0, and then we're going down to -1, and we're back to 0 to complete the 2 pi period. So our x prime is shrinking by 1/2, so that's just going to be 1/2 x. Our y prime is going to be -1/2 x, okay? -1/2 y, I'm sorry. And let's just plug that in. Well, 1/2 of 0 is 0. Half of pi over 2. Remember, multiplying by 1/2. It's just going to be pi over 4. And it's going to be a little tight in here. And half of pi is just pi over 2. And half of 3 pi over 2, we're multiplying by half, is 3 pi over 4. 3 pi over 4. And then 2 pi, half of that is going to be pi. All right. I will have PDF notes from last semester's class on these as well. That's going to be a little bit neater than what I can do on this writing pad. We're taking my y coordinate, these right here, multiplying by -1/2, so we're still going to get 0. We're going to get -0.5, -0.5. We're going to get 0 because that's just straightforward. And we're going to get a positive 0.5 here. And down here we're going to get another 0. All right? Because that's the way it is. Now I knew better than to try and graph this using the writing tablet. So I already pre-graphed it. And let me go over this real quick. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these and we're going to go 0, 0 right here. Now remember, sine starts at 0, 0, but it goes up. But we reflect it across the x. So now what was up is now down. And when we go to what was pi over 2, it's now pi over 4. And we're at -0.5. And as you can see, I did a green dashed line reflecting my amplitude. We're up 0.5, we're down 0.5 from the equilibrium. And then I just carefully graph the remaining points. Once I got the pattern, I usually do one complete period to find the pattern. I don't really need a table to complete the rest of it. I just go up and down, just like that, and all happy, merrily on our way to grandmother's house. Okay? So pause, look at this, maybe check it out on your own scratch paper, and then let's go on to the next one. Next. So here I have cosine of parentheses x plus 4 over pi, pi over 4, plus 1/2. So my amplitude, come on, this is y is equal to, my amplitude is a 1. My period, it's 2 pi over b. Since b is a 1, it's going to be 2 pi. Phase shift, I am going left pi over 4. All right, pi over 4. And my vertical shift, I'm up 1/2. So let's take a look at what's going on the table. There's nothing exciting on stretching or shrinking. There's nothing exciting on reflections. We're just going left pi over 4, and we are going up 0.5 or 1/2, however you want to look at it. So this is going to be y is equal to cosine of x, my parent function. We start high and go low. Nothing's really changed. 1, 0, -1, 0, and 1. There's my complete 2 pi period. X prime, however, is I'm subtracting pi over 4. So that's going to be x minus pi over 4. My y prime is y plus 1/2. Not too bad. Think of it as 0.5 if you want to. So I'm going to subtract pi over 4 over here, so that's negative pi over 4. Subtract here. If you want to think about it, just multiply by 2 on the bottom. That's 2 pi over 4. Well, that's going to leave you with 1 pi over 4, or just pi over 4. And what we have here is pi. If you want to think that as 4 pi over 4, subtract 1 pi, you got 3 pi over 4. So on. And you have 3 pi over 2. I know on the notes it has a 4 there, but that's supposed to be a 3. You could think that it's 6 pi over 4. Subtract it, you're going to get 5 pi over 4. Maybe. Okay. And then 2 pi, you can think that as 8 pi over 4 if you want to, and that's going to give you 7 pi over 4. Maybe. Okay. Let me find my cursor. Where's my cursor? There it is. Okay. So I'm going to add 0.5 to this. All right, to my y. So it's 1.5. That's going to be 0.5. That's going to be negative 0.5. I'm going to have 0.5 again, and then I'm going to come back to 1.5. So let's take a look at what the graph is. I'm going to graph these coordinates right here. And here it is. I dash my altitude, my amplitude, okay? My equilibrium point is actually at 0.5. And you can do a little dash if you want to. And you're going to be 1 above and 1 below because there's no stretching or compressing. And I just carefully graph one complete cycle. Once I have the pattern, I can fill out the whole thing. You want to practice that. So here's our last worked example. I didn't put a box to hide this, but let's go ahead and see what's going on with this. So I want to find out what my amplitude is. That should be a 1 second answer. My period, 2 pi over b, is going to be 2 pi. So again, nothing too exciting there. Hello, kitty. All right. I'm going to phase shift left pi over 2. Vertical shift, I don't have anything going on. So really not too much exciting on this one either. So what I'm going to have is I'm going to have x, well, let's go ahead and put in our parent function, sine of x. Remember, we start medium. So at 0, we're going to be at 0. Then we go up. Then we go back down. Then we go down below. And then we come right back up. There's my 2 pi cycle, my period. So I'm going to do pi minus 4. X minus pi over 2. Pi over 2. And then here, y, I'm going just to do 3y. I'm multiplying the y by 3. So when I subtract pi over 2, I'm going to have a negative. I mean, you can even look on here. You're just going to have negative pi over 2 right here. And then here, I'm going to end up with a 0. Half of pi, I'm going to take pi over 2. So I have that. And then I'm going to subtract another. Think of that, if you want, as 3 pi over 2 minus pi over 2 is going to give you 2 pi over 2, which is just a happy old pi. And then 3 pi over 2 for this one. Okay. Multiplying by 3, so I'm going to have 0, 3, 0, negative 3, and 0. So when I go graph this puppy, I have this situation here. I'm going to go to negative pi over 2 and graph 0. I'm going to go to 0 and graph 3. Then I go to pi over 2 and I graph 0. And then when I come right here to pi, I'm all the way down here to negative 3. I think I have the pattern by now. But let's be a little paranoid and we complete our complete period here. So 3 pi over 2 gets me right back to here. So I know I'm just going to have this pattern right here, and I could keep going on and on and on. I could work it backwards. So I have a fourth one here I just want to walk through real quick. And it's going to be straightforward. Remember, 2 pi, your period is 2 pi over b. So that's going to be 4 pi on your period. All right? That's going to stretch things out. And I picked this one because of that. We're stretching that period out. Phase shift, nothing going on right or left. And we're down 1. So that's going to impact my equilibrium. My equilibrium is now down here. And my amplitude is just a half above and a half below. So here, remember, you just flip it. It's the reciprocal. I always taught it in algebra when I taught algebra 2. It's 1 over b. So this is just going to be 2x. Our y, which I don't have listed here, is going to be 1 half. Come on, y minus 1. All right? Didn't quite get it there. And you're just going to plug these in, and you're going to plot very, very carefully. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get this one loaded. This is part 1. I'm going to do part 2 here in a moment. And I'll get this loaded to YouTube and put it also on Webex. Make sure you show tomorrow, ready to take some notes. Okay, bye.